Your child asked you a question this morning, something small and ordinary about their day or their homework or something they were thinking about. And you were there physically, standing in the same room, maybe making breakfast or getting ready for work, but you weren't really there. Your mind was already at the office, running through the meeting you have at 9 or the deadline approaching on Wednesday or the email you need to send before you even get to your desk. So you gave them a distracted answer, something brief and automatic that didn't really engage with what they were asking. And they noticed. Children always notice. They might not say anything about it, but they register when you're present in body, but absent in attention. This happens every morning or most mornings, and it's going to happen again tonight when you come home tired from 8 or 9 or 10 hours of work. They'll try to tell you about their day, and you'll be scrolling through your phone or thinking about tomorrow's tasks or simply too depleted to give them the attention and energy they deserve. You're providing for them in every material way. They have food and shelter and clothes and opportunities. You're working hard to give them a good life. But somewhere in the transaction of trading your time and energy for a salary, something else is being traded that doesn't show up on any balance sheet. Your presence, your attention, your energy. The parts of you that make you a parent and not just a provider. This is what your salary costs your children, and most people don't calculate this cost until it's too late to recover what was lost. There's a story about a stonecutter who worked from dawn until dusk every day, carving monuments and buildings from massive blocks of stone. He took great pride in his work and earned a good living that allowed him to support his family comfortably. One day, his young son asked if he could come watch his father work. The stonecutter was pleased and brought the boy to the quarry. The child sat on a rock and watched his father chip away at the stone for hours, and then asked a simple question. "Father, what are you building?" The stonecutter realized he didn't actually know. He was being paid to cut stone according to specifications someone else had determined, but he had no idea what the final structure would be or what purpose it would serve. He was so focused on the task and the payment that he'd never stopped to consider what he was actually building. That night, he looked at his son and realized something that made his chest tighten. He knew exactly how much stone he'd cut that week and how much he'd been paid for it. But he couldn't remember a single meaningful conversation he'd had with his child in months. He knew the measurements of every block he'd carved, but he didn't know what his son was learning in school or what he dreamed about or what frightened him or made him laugh. He was building a living, but he didn't know what kind of life he was building or whether his son would remember him as anything more than someone who was always working. Here's what actually happens when you trade your presence for a salary year after year. Your children grow up with a parent who is technically there but functionally absent much of the time. You're home for dinner maybe, but you're exhausted and distracted. You're there on weekends, but you're catching up on work or recovering from the week or preparing for the week ahead. You attend some of their events and activities, but you're checking your phone or thinking about the tasks waiting for you. And children don't understand the economics of this trade. They don't grasp that you're absent because you're working to provide for them. What they understand is much simpler and more painful. They learn that work is more important than they are. They learn that your attention and energy belong to your job first and to them second. They learn that being tired or busy or stressed are valid reasons not to be fully present. And they learn this not through anything you say, but through the patterns they observe day after day, year after year. Let's be very specific about what they're actually missing when you're providing financially, but absent emotionally and mentally. They're missing the conversations that happen when you're not distracted, the ones where they feel safe enough to tell you what they're really thinking or worried about. Those conversations don't happen on a schedule. They emerge spontaneously when a child senses that you're truly available and present. But if you're always half present, always with one part of your mind elsewhere, those moments of real connection never arrive. They're missing the experience of having a parent who is curious about their inner world, who asks questions and listens to answers and remembers what they said. They're missing the modeling of what it looks like to be fully engaged with life rather than perpetually distracted and depleted. They're missing your best energy because that energy is spent at work before you ever get home. What they get are the leftovers, the depleted version of you that has nothing substantial to give. And perhaps most significantly, they're missing the security that comes from feeling like they matter more than anything else in your life. Because no matter what you say about how important they are, your actions are teaching them a different lesson. And here's what happens to your relationship with them over time when this pattern continues year after year. When they're young, they still reach for you constantly. They ask for your attention 100 times a day. They bring you their drawings and their stories and their questions and their needs. And when you're too busy or too tired or too distracted to engage most of the time, they gradually stop reaching, not all at once, but slowly over months and years. They learn that you're not reliably available for connection, so they stop offering it as freely. By the time they're teenagers, this pattern is fully established. They're in their room and you're in yours. They have their life and you have yours. And when you finally have a little more time or energy and you reach for connection with them, you discover something painful. They're not interested anymore. The door you were too busy to walk through when it was open has closed. And now they're the ones who are too busy, too distracted, too withdrawn to let you in. You tell yourself this is normal adolescence, kids pulling away from parents. And maybe that's part of it. But there's another part you don't want to acknowledge. They learn from you how relationships work. You taught them that being physically present but emotionally absent is normal. You taught them that work and productivity matter more than connection. You taught them that love is provided through material support rather than through attention and presence. And now they're simply reflecting back what you modeled for them all those years. Let's talk about what this costs them in ways that extend beyond your relationship with them. Children learn how to be adults by watching the adults closest to them. What are they learning from watching you? They're learning that work is the primary organizing principle of life, that exhaustion and stress are normal states of being, that you trade your time and energy and presence for money, and that trade is simply what adults do. They're learning that you can be successful by conventional measures, earning a good salary and providing materially while being utterly depleted and disconnected. They're learning that this is what responsible adulthood looks like, and they're internalizing this as the template for their own future. So when they grow up and enter the working world, what do you think they'll do? They'll make the same trade you made. They'll sacrifice their presence and energy for a salary. They'll repeat the pattern, possibly with their own children someday. The cost of your salary isn't just paid by your children. It's paid forward into generations you'll never meet as the pattern perpetuates itself through the template you're providing. But there's an even deeper cost that's harder to articulate, but perhaps more significant. You're missing them. You're missing the actual experience of knowing your children as whole, complex, evolving human beings. You're missing the pleasure of their company, the specific way they think and express themselves, the little moments of humor and connection and shared understanding that make a relationship rich and meaningful. You're working hard to provide opportunities for them, to give them a good education and nice things and experiences, but you're not there to actually share most of those experiences with them. You're funding their childhood, but you're not present for it. And time moves in one direction only. Your child at 5 years old exists only once. Your child at 10 exists only once. Each age, each phase, each moment of development happens one time, and then it's gone forever. You can't bank these moments and return to them later when you're less busy or less tired. You can't buy them back with the money you earned while you were missing them. They're simply gone, replaced by new moments that you're also too exhausted or distracted to fully experience. And let's acknowledge the economic pressure that creates the situation, because this isn't a simple story about personal choice and priorities. You're working this hard because you need to. The salary pays for housing in a decent school district. It pays for healthcare and food and clothing and childcare while you're at work earning the money to pay for childcare. It pays for the life you believe your children deserve, the opportunities you want them to have. You're caught in a system where providing materially requires sacrificing presence, where being a good provider and being a present parent seem to be mutually exclusive, and maybe in some cases they are, given the economic realities of housing costs and healthcare and the price of basic stability. So you make the trade that seems necessary, that seems responsible. You work hard to earn the salary that provides security and opportunity. But the trade still costs something, and your children are the ones who pay the price through your absence. There's a Buddhist teaching about a wealthy merchant who spent years traveling to distant lands to trade goods and accumulate wealth. He would leave his family for months or even years at a time, always promising that when he had earned enough, he would return and never leave again. He would be able to give them everything they needed, and they would finally be together. But each time he returned, he found that enough was never quite enough. There was always a reason to make one more journey, to accumulate a bit more security, to reach for the next level of success. His children grew up in his absence. When his son was grown, the merchant finally retired and came home to stay. He wanted to build a relationship with his adult son, to share his wisdom and experiences, to finally be the father he'd always intended to be once he had time. But his son was polite and distant. The merchant didn't understand why. "I worked my entire life for you," he said. "I gave you everything." And his son replied quietly, "You gave me everything except yourself. The things you bought me are long gone. The money you sent allowed me to survive. But I never learned how to live from you because you were never there to teach me. You were always somewhere else, earning money to give me a life. But you weren't in that life with me." This is the calculation that most working parents are making, consciously or unconsciously. How much presence can you sacrifice for how much financial security? How many missed bedtimes and distracted dinners and weekends spent catching up on? Work are worth the salary that pays for the house and the school and the opportunities? And there's no clean answer to this question because the trade-offs are real on both sides. Not earning enough creates its own damage. Children suffer from financial instability and lack of opportunity. Parents suffer from the stress of not being able to provide. But earning enough by being absent creates a different kind of damage, subtler perhaps, but no less real. Your children have material security but emotional uncertainty. They have opportunities but no model of how to be fully present and engaged with life. They have things but they don't have you, not the best version of you, not the version that has attention and energy and presence to offer. Here's what this looks like in the small daily moments that accumulate into a childhood. It's Tuesday evening and your child wants to show you something they made at school. You're tired from work and you're thinking about the presentation you have to prepare for tomorrow, so you glance at it quickly and say something generic and encouraging, and you can see in their face that they know you're not really seeing what they're showing you. It's Saturday morning and they want you to play with them, some game or activity that seems trivial to you but matters to them. But you have emails to catch up on and errands to run, and you're still recovering from the week. So you tell them maybe later, or you participate half-heartedly while part of your mind is elsewhere. It's bedtime and they want to talk instead of sleep. That magical window when children often open up about what they're really thinking or feeling. But you're exhausted and you have to work tomorrow and you need them to go to sleep so you can have a few minutes to yourself before you collapse. So you cut the conversation short. None of these individual moments seem significant. But this is how a childhood passes. Moment by moment, interaction by interaction, presence denied or presence offered. And children are building their internal sense of self and their understanding of relationships based on these accumulated moments. 20 years from now, your child will be an adult. They'll have their own life and their own struggles and their own decisions to make about how to balance work and relationships and presence. And they'll carry with them whatever they learned from watching you navigate these same questions. What will they have learned? That work comes first. That exhaustion is the price of responsibility, that you can love someone and still be perpetually absent from their life. That material provision is the primary way to show care. These aren't lessons you intended to teach, but they're the lessons embedded in the pattern of your days, and children learn more from patterns than from words. You can tell them they're your priority while showing them through your daily choices that work is actually your priority, and they'll believe what you show them, not what you tell them. Tomorrow morning, your child will try again to reach for your attention. Maybe they'll have a question or want to share something or just want a moment of connection before you both disappear into your separate days. And you'll be rushing to get ready for work, your mind already shifting into the tasks and responsibilities waiting for you. You'll have a choice in that moment, the same choice you have every day. You can give them a distracted fragment of your attention while most of you is already gone, or you can stop for 30 seconds and be fully present, making eye contact, really listening, letting them feel like they matter more than whatever is waiting for you at work. 30 seconds. That's all it would take to offer presence instead of just proximity. But 30 seconds expands into minutes, and minutes accumulate into hours, and hours shape days, and days become the childhood you're either present for or absent from. The question isn't whether your salary costs your children something. It does. The question is whether you can see the cost clearly enough to decide if the trade is worth it. Whether the material provision you're working so hard to offer balances against the presence you're sacrificing to provide it. Only you can answer that. Only you know what your specific situation requires and what your actual options are. But you can't answer it honestly if you're not willing to acknowledge what's being traded. Your children need provision, yes, but they also need you, not the exhausted, depleted, distracted version of you that's left after work has taken its share. They need the version of you that has energy and attention and presence to offer, the version that actually sees them and hears them and engages with who they are. And every day you spend giving your best to your work is a day they don't get access to your best. That's the cost. Sit with that. Not to feel guilty, but to see it clearly, because you can't make conscious choices about something you refuse to see.